you've lost your defensive coordinator, Brandon Staley, going over to be the head coach of the Chargers. Now, Raheem Morris is the new defensive coordinator after he spent his time as the DC with the Falcons and then for a brief period as the interim head coach. What did you make of the appointment of Morris in as the defensive coordinator, despite the fact that his history of coaching shows that he's actually worked on the offense and the defensive side of the ball too? So would you sort of prefer that, where someone has knowledge of both sides of the ball, or would you prefer your defensive coordinator to, have a knowledge of the side that he's obviously the coordinator of, being the defense?
That's a good question. I never thought about that. I guess, it is good to have multiple perspectives, which, like you said, Raheem Morris does. I think it's going to be hard to replace Brandon Staley just because he was so good. And, there's only half the battle that people look at, which is game planning, right? You got to go into a game with a good game plan. Otherwise, you're going to be toast. But that's only half the battle. The other half the battle is being able to adjust in game and being able to call the right plays at the right time, because at the end of the day, it's just a chess match between offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators. And, they're going to call certain plays that are going to test you out and feel you out and see what you run in response, and then call it again later in the game to try and get you. So I think that's one of the biggest aspects that I kind of not necessarily worry about, but I'm concerned about, or I'm intrigued to see how it works out. How can he adjust? What kind of system is he going to run? Him and Sean McVay go way back in time. I think they were in Tampa together many, many years ago. They were in Washington together nearly a decade ago. So they're clear, they got a clear friendship there. They got a good friendship. And obviously he felt good about hiring him. So, I don't know that you can have a guy that's ever going to be as good as Brandon Staley was last year. They were the number one defense in pretty much every metric you can look at. But at the same time, I think Raheem Morris has a lot of experience. He's a guy that I think players like to, play for. And I think it's going to be interesting to see. He's still got a lot of talent there, Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey. So you got to lean on those stars and put guys in positions to succeed. But it's definitely one of the more intriguing storylines, I think, going for the Rams, going into the season.
Yeah, and sort of one area that, if there is maybe a weakness on that defense, which, like you said, was number one overall last year, was absolutely fantastic, is possibly the linebacking position. Because just looking at the depth chart here now, sort of they have the likes of Kenny Young and Mika Kaiser down as probably the starters. Like, are you happy with those two going forward being your starting linebackers next year, or do you think maybe there's some areas or somewhere that they can improve on?
Those were the starters last year. I don't know that they will be going into this year. I think they're going to give Ernest Jones, the third-round pick that they picked out of South Carolina, every chance to start. They really like him from a head-up approach in terms of his IQ, his football acumen, lining guys up. I'm sure they value that kind of stuff. So I think they're going to give him the shot. And next to him last year was supposed to be Travin Howard, a former safety out of TCU, a seventh-round pick. But he got injured in, training camp. There wasn't a real training camp, or there was to some degree. He got injured, lost the whole season, so he obviously couldn't play. I think they're going to give him every shot to start this season too. So I'm expecting it to be Ernest Jones and Travin Howard. That's just a guess at this point. But if that's a duo, I think that's significantly better than what they had last year. Still not one of the better ones in the league for sure. Travin Howard is much more coverage-based and coverage-centric. He's a lot quicker of a mover. Whereas Ernest Jones, he's really bad in coverage, but he's good at taking guys on, taking on blocks, playing in the box, and trying to play the run. So they got, a couple of bodies there. I think it's going to be one of the more intriguing battles in training camp for sure. I wouldn't be shocked to see it go in any direction. I think there's 4 or 5 guys that could ultimately start going into the season, but I'm expecting it to be Travin Howard and Ernest Jones right now.